Amateur Radio News and Notes. For Friday, March 20th, 2026, I'm Ed Kabik, November 2 Echo Charlie. In the log this week, we've got a contest spotlight for the Virginia Cuso Party. Also have a DXpedition spotlight for CY0S on Sable Island. The Voice of America staff has been reinstated by a U.S. District Court. Also, Indiana passes an HOA bill. We'll talk about MVARC Nets on the air, see what's happening with DX, get a solar activity update, talk about some upcoming contests, and take a look at interesting online radio content. As always, links to all reference content can be found in the show notes or at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. This weekend brings the 2026 edition of the Virginia Cuso Party. The fun starts on Saturday, March 21st, 2026 at 1400 UTC. That's 10 a.m. on Saturday Eastern Time until Sunday, March 22nd at 400 UTC. That is midnight Saturday night Eastern Time. And then it continues at 1200 UTC on Sunday, that's 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Sunday, until 2400 UTC Sunday, that is 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday. The Virginia Cuso Party is always one of the best organized and most participated in Cuso parties of the year. This year, there's a twist for the bonus stations with a series of 6 one-by-one calls with a K4 prefix that spell out lovers with their suffixes to commemorate the Virginia is for Lovers slogan, with 50 points being awarded per station. There's even a certificate for those who get a clean sweep of all the Lovers stations. There's another bonus competition to work Virginia Club stations with 20 points per bonus station. As always, there are 28 plaques for the high achievers, and tools, including a DX cluster and mobile tracker, can be found on the VAQP website. The exchange is serial number and county or independent city for Virginia stations, and serial number and state, province, or DX for non-Virginia stations. So, for my 42nd contact at my QTH in Fairfax County, Virginia, my exchange would be 42FFX. All bands except the WARC bands are permitted, and use of spotting clusters is permitted. Operating categories include QRP, that's under 5 watts, low power, 150 watts and under, and high power for over 150 watts. Stations can be worked once per band and mode. Modes allowed are CW, phone, and digital, but you need to be able to get the exchange, so FT8 isn't practical, while RTTY will work. Operating classes include single operator, multi-single, and multi-multi, with fixed, mobile, expedition, and rover categories for multiple and single band entries, and logs must be submitted by April 15th. This is always a blast, and your author hopes to join in this weekend, so if you hear me, give me a call. Full rules and a whole lot of information can be found at a link in the show notes. Good luck. The highly anticipated CY0SD Expedition to Sable Island is already underway, and as of 040 UTC, they had 13,422 Cusos in the log with some truly massive pileups. Sable Island is an island in the North Atlantic Ocean, about 95 nautical miles southeast of Nova Scotia. It is a narrow sandbar that's about 26 miles long, but only 0.75 miles wide at its widest point. It's known for wild horses. The CY0S team plans to be on the island until March 31st. The team plans to work 160 meters to 6 meters as well as EME on 23 centimeters. For FT8, they plan to use Super Fox in times of heavy pileups and Fox and Hound mode later on. Being so close to the East Coast, they have been loud and busy. More information can be found at links in the show notes. Good luck. For the last year, Voice of America employees have been on paid administrative leave as the current administration sought to reduce the state-run broadcaster, quote, to its statutory minimum. On Tuesday, U.S. District Judge Royce Lamberth ruled that the shutdown violated federal administrative law. His order requires full-time employees to return to work by March 23rd and resume international broadcasting. More information can be found at a link in the show notes. Earlier this month, the state of Indiana passed House Bill 1152, which stipulates, quote, a homeowners association may not adopt or enforce a regulation, rule, or other policy that has the effect of prohibiting a person from maintaining an amateur radio antenna on a property that the person owns, rents, or leases. This law will go into effect on July 1st, 2026, and should greatly assist amateurs in enjoying their hobby from their homes. While this applies to only the state of Indiana, there is legislation currently being considered by the U.S. House and Senate, H.R. 1094 and S. 459, that would enact similar protections nationwide. As the new law in Indiana shows, protections like this are possible. The ARRL has been encouraging amateur radio operators around the country to visit send-a-letter.org/HOA and fill out the form to have letters sent in support of the measure to your members of the U.S. House of Representatives and Senate to extend protections like those enacted in Indiana nationwide. Now let's take a look at some MVARC Nets on the air. As always, we have our 2-meter net on Tuesdays at 7 p.m. on the repeater. That is immediately followed by the 2-meter digital net on Yaesu System Fusion, C4 FM on the same frequency. Then on the weekends, we've got the MVARC Slow Speed CW Roundtable, Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 a.m. on 3.565 megahertz CW, and that's followed by the MVARC Cherry Tree Net on Saturday and Sunday at 8:30 a.m. on 3.920 megahertz lower sideband, where we always have a great conversation, and you're always welcome to join us. Now let's take a quick look at what is happening with DX. There'll be a lot of DX on the air this week. Stations on the air include Sable Island, like we mentioned before, St. Kitts and Nevis, Madeira Island, Central Kiribati, Antigua, Bangladesh, Belize, Greenland, Austral Islands, Vanuatu, Ghana, St. Martin, South Orkney Islands, Minami Torishima, Colombia, and Solomon Islands. A calendar of DXpeditions can be found at dxnews.com/calendar. And now it's time for a solar activity update. As we go to press, the solar flux index was 106, and the estimated sunspot number was 38, with 2 numbered sunspot regions visible from Earth. Over the last week, the SFI has decreased, and solar activity has been at low levels in the last 24 hours. The geomagnetic field has been at quiet levels in the last 24 hours, and the KP index reached 1 yesterday. The solar wind peaked at 428 kilometers a second. Solar activity is predicted to be at low levels with a slight chance of M-class flares today through Sunday. The geomagnetic field is forecast to be at unsettled to major storm levels today, at active to major storm levels on Saturday, and at unsettled to minor storm levels on Sunday. The chance of solar radiation storms at the S1 or greater level is at 1% today through Sunday. R1 to R2 radio blackouts are possible in the near term, with a predicted probability of 15% today through Sunday. R3 or greater blackouts are unlikely, with a 1% chance predicted today through Sunday. It remains a fantastic time for amateurs to get on the air and work the world. Good sources of real-time solar information include spaceweatherlive.com and solarham.com. A good overview of conditions can be found at dx.qsl.net/propagation. To see D-layer absorption data and associated radio blackouts, visit the NOAA DRAP page. And to see real-time maximum usable frequency, or MUF, and critical frequency, or FOF2 information from Radiosonde data, visit prompt.kc2g.com. And now let's take a look at some upcoming contests. This weekend brings the Virginia Cuso party we talked about earlier. Also, the PODXS 070 Club, St. Patrick's Day contest, the John Moyle Memorial Field Day, the BARTG HF Riddy contest, the Popov Memorial contest, the Russian DX contest, the AGCW VHF UHF contest, the Feldhall Sprint, and the UBA Spring contest on single sideband. As always, the K1 USN SSTs, the MSTs, and CWTs will also be on the air. The full contest calendar with events and exchanges can be found at contestcalendar.com. And now let's wrap things up with some interesting online radio content. As always, all the links we're about to discuss are in the show notes or at our Substack at mvarc.substack.com. Walt K4OGO operates Beach Portable with the Yaesu ATAS 25 antenna. Stuart Victor Echo 9 Charlie Fox talks to Sebastian KI2D about Ham 2K portable logger. Mike K8MRD tests out the LDG Z11 Pro 2 automatic tuner. Dr. Tim of the Scove WX6SWW takes a look at an Earth-directed solar storm. Ian 4F1EBD shares footage of the 3Y0K DXpedition leaving Bouvet. Tim K50HY talks about the CFT1 QRP radio kit. Save It for Parts does satellite radio work through the International Space Station. Lewis M3HHY looks at the M-Lite 880 shortwave radio. Tim K3LR talks to Michael W8CI about the recently announced Hamvention Award winners. Josh KI6NAZ upgrades his Elecraft KX2 to allow for USB-C charging. And Hayden VK7HH does Soda and Poda from Tasmania. Well, that's it for this week. I've been Ed, November 2 Echo Charlie. Thanks, as always, for joining us. We hope you have a great week ahead. Best 73, and we look forward to seeing you next week.